Welcome to the Meteor Instructional Best Practices webinar series. Meteor Education is a leading educational services partner working with education providers to help them create high-impact learning experiences. As one of the largest providers of learning spaces, including furnishings and interior design services, Meteor's focus is the integration of best practices for teaching and learning to drive inquiry-based instruction, effective use of modern classrooms, and increase student achievement. Today, we are going to explore real-world versus real-world performance tasks. Did you know there is a difference between real-world tasks and real-world performance tasks, specifically in the level of rigor required for each? Based on Meteor's 5 learning design principles, our webinar today focuses on authentic inquiry, those real-world relevant questions or tasks where students determine the questions they want to answer, research possible solutions, and provide evidence from reliable sources to back up their answer. We will also connect with rigor, what the students do and how educators need to set up experiences that challenge students. And as always, the design principles align to John Hattie's research in visible learning. Specifically, we'll discuss teacher expectation of students, depth of conceptual knowledge, and complex task analysis. So what do real-world tasks and real-world performance tasks look like in the classroom? And what specifically is the teacher action and student action for these types of learning experiences? Before we begin, let's get on the same page with our semantics. Is it potato or potato, or tomato or tomato? And the question is, does it really make a difference? Well, as educators, the semantics do make a huge difference because our differing mental models can hinder our learning and the conversations and applications of when and where to use specific strategies in the classroom. We often hear as educators a lot of common terms. However, we may not think about the nuances of the terms, which can make or break the effectiveness of our instructional practices. Those nuances can make a big difference. What do we mean by real-world tasks? What is your mental model? It's really important for the purposes of college and career readiness and increasing student achievement that we are clear on what real-world tasks are and what they are not. Otherwise, we have those misconceptions. So typically when we talk about real-world tasks, we think about a scenario that is relevant or practical in everyday life. However, just that alone will not increase student achievement to the strategic thinking level we want our students to reach. Let's look at an analogy and a couple of examples to illustrate this. When you hear this, what comes to mind? Real-world performance tasks are more like playing baseball rather than playing catch. Think about that. What skills do you need to play catch? You need to know how to hold the ball, how to wear the glove correctly, and how to throw underhand and overhand, and even how to throw a basket catch or a fastball. There are many skills. Think about the skills you need to actually play the game of baseball. Now you need to be strategic and be able to make decisions based on the action of the other players on the field. You need to be able to decide if you should throw the ball to stop a home run or throw the ball for a double play. You have to know the other players on your team and be able to predict their actions, which could impact your actions. And yes, you do have to be able to throw and hit the ball correctly in order to play the game. Those are important skills that are at the foundation. You will notice that they are really those skills at a DOK1 and DOK2 level of thinking. Once you model the action, students simply repeat the action. In a DOK1, you catch the ball, and at a DOK2, you might be able to follow a sequence of actions. Playing catch might remind you of a benchmark assessment. It's important for you to know if students have that skill, but that skill alone is in isolation, and that alone will not move us to playing the game of baseball or completing a real-world performance task at a DOK level of 3 or 4. That's strategic thinking or extended thinking. Here's another example of the differences. This is an example in art. Practicing brushstrokes is a skill at a depth of knowledge 1 level. Teachers have modeled the skill and students are practicing. As students deepen that skill, they begin to use several learned strokes in a painting technique. They have now increased their thinking to a depth of knowledge 2 level. It is the real-world performance task at a DOK 3 or 4 level when students have to determine the picture to draw, their interpretation of that picture, and the appropriate brushstrokes and other techniques to use that conveys the message they want to give. Students are playing the game of baseball here. This piece of art could not be created by simple brushstrokes alone. Therefore, for our common understanding and common language, it's important to know that there is a difference between real-world tasks and real-world performance tasks. A real-world task alone is a relevant scenario. It is a task that a student completes that could be relevant outside the four walls of the classroom. However, most of our real-world tasks alone would still be at a DOK 1 or 2 level of thinking. We want to reach that strategic thinking level. And to do that, we have to have a relevant task plus strategic thinking of students. That means a task at a DOK 3 or above. And this task would have students defend, argue, or they might have multiple perspectives, and they're going to use evidence. This is a real-world performance task. Now let's look at a few examples so you can see the difference in action. Here is a math scenario. You are going to the store to find a new outfit for the dance. An item originally priced at $55 is marked 25% off. What is the sale price? Is this task relevant in everyday life? Absolutely. However, you will notice that this task is only at a depth of knowledge 2 level of thinking. Students are simply being asked to determine what 25% of $55 would be, and then they subtract that amount from the original amount to come up with the price of $41.25. This task is a relevant scenario, so it is a real-world task, but it's not moving students to that strategic thinking level in which they need to defend, argue, or have multiple perspectives with evidence. Here's the difference. This math task states, Susie is organizing the printing of tickets for a show her friends are producing. She has collected prices from several printers, and these two seem to be the best. Susie wants to go for the best buy. She doesn't yet know how many people are going to come. Show Susie a couple of ways in which she could make the right decision, whatever the number. Illustrate your advice with a couple of examples. This is also a relevant scenario. It is real world. However, this task also requires students to be able to justify their decision. Susie must decide which printing service will give her the best buy and determine this without all the given information. She must determine her entry point for beginning this task, and she has to show how she strategically makes her decision. This task is at a depth of knowledge 3 level. So now we have a relevant scenario plus strategic thinking of students. That is a real-world performance task. Here is a literacy example. This example states, cereal boxes advertise as well as give information. Read the cereal box shown below, then answer the questions that follow. The first question stated, why is the name Choco Yummies in large print on the front of the box? A, it reminds the reader of all the ingredients. B, it draws attention to the name of the cereal. C, it reminds the reader that the cereal tastes good. Or D, it makes the box look bigger. This is certainly a relevant scenario for students. Most students have looked at a cereal box or any other labeling on food for that matter. However, this task does not ask students to be strategic in providing their answer. This question is only at a depth of knowledge 2 level of thinking. Again, it's relevant, so it is a real-world task, but it doesn't reach the DOK 3 or 4 level of thinking. Here's a question using the same information on the cereal box. On the Choco Yummy cereal box, there are several examples of facts and opinions. A, list 2 statements from the box that are opinions. B, explain how these 2 statements make customers want to buy and eat Choco Yummies. Now let's break this task down. First, we can agree that it is a relevant scenario for students. Next, we want to check to see if students must reach the DOK 3 or 4 level of thinking. And in this case, the answer is yes. This task has multiple perspectives where students must defend and justify their answer. So because this task is relevant and requires strategic thinking of students, we can determine that this is a real-world performance task. So we've spent some time talking about and understanding how to identify a real-world versus a real-world performance task. Remember, to get to that real-world performance task, it's really a relevant scenario plus strategic thinking of students, those depth of knowledge 3 and 4 level tasks. The following structure can help provide student experiences to lead up to those real-world performance tasks. This structure is comprised of 3 components: 2 levels of inquiry, gradual release of responsibility, and tasks that engage students in multiple opportunities. First, performance tasks include 2 levels of inquiry, structured and independent. The structured level is really those real-world tasks that are at a depth of knowledge 1 or 2 level, the tasks that scaffold up to the higher levels of DOK. Remember, it's not a real-world performance task until you add that depth of knowledge 3 level. And that would be at the independent level of inquiry, where students perform using a real-world performance task. The structure of the real-world performance task also addresses the gradual release of responsibility. Teachers use the task at the DOK 1 and 2 scaffolding levels to gradually release responsibility to their students. This is where students are given directions by the teacher and modeled by the teacher, the I do. Then students practice with teacher support and coaching, the we do. And that leads to the expanded and deepened understanding at the DOK 3 level task, or the real-world performance task, and that would be the you do. As students grow and become more accomplished, it's important for the teacher to pull some of the support structures out. We have to reduce that scaffolding and give students opportunities to explore the concepts within the standards and to provide evidence of their understanding. Real-world performance tasks are meant to be designed to move from teacher control to student control of learning. At this point, students are working independently from the teacher, although it can certainly be in collaborative groups with other students, but the teacher's role is that of facilitator. And finally, the structure of a real-world performance task should engage students in multiple opportunities and experiences. Students should be allowed to explore the concepts, not just answer question after question. Rather than just asking students, "How did you get your answer?" it's necessary to ask them to explain the process, the thinking behind their answers. The questions you might ask would be like, "Why did you start that with this step? Are there other possible answers? How did you determine that these articles support your hypothesis? If the number was increased by 2, how would that change the results? Is there a model that would visually show what the answer actually means?" Another technique used to engage students in multiple opportunities to make their thinking visible is asking students to elaborate, to give other examples of how something might be used differently, or if parts of the task were to change, how would that alter how you approach the task? And finally, evaluation. This is not the evaluation of the student, but getting the student to evaluate the task, what the task is actually asking them to do, and evaluate their own work as they work through the task and upon completion of it. So in summary, a real-world task alone is a relevant scenario. It is a task a student completes that would be at a DOK 1 or 2 level of thinking. It is those tasks where students are playing catch. But to get students to begin playing the game of baseball, to reach the strategic and extended levels of thinking, we take a relevant scenario and create tasks or experiences for students at the DOK 3 or 4 level to get to that strategic level of thinking in which students must defend, argue, or have multiple perspectives using evidence. This is a real-world performance task. Keep in mind those DOK 1 and 2 questions build so students learn the skills necessary in order to complete the final real-world performance task independently and proficiently. So all of these tasks are necessary in a thoughtful unit of study. Here are some questions for you or your school team to discuss based on this short webinar. What is a real-world task and a real-world performance task? What are their differences? How do you use real-world tasks to scaffold up to real-world performance tasks? Based on your new learning about the nuances of real-world task and real-world performance task, what, if any, gaps exist in your classroom or school? As you deepen your understanding of real-world tasks and real-world performance tasks, you can find additional resources on this topic in the resource folder. This webinar series is brought to you by Meteor Education and the Center for College and Career Readiness. For more information about how Meteor Education can help you develop high-impact learning experiences, go to meteoreducation.com.